Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be able to speak here. And I do not have any financial conflicts to disclose. I would like to start out with a slide that's really about the power of prevention. It's a little bit complicated, so let me walk you through it. This illustrates the incidence of cancer for stomach, breast, prostate, and colon cancer. And the data is a little bit older. It's the data from Japanese that migrated to Hawaii. What we have here on the left is the incidence rates in red of the Japanese in their home country. What the green are the Caucasian Hawaiians. And so you see stomach cancer is much more prevalent in Japan than in Hawaii among Caucasians, whereas breast, prostate, and colon cancer all are much lower among Japanese than among the Caucasian Hawaiians. But what matters about this slide is that people have migrated to Hawaii. And what we have here in the middle are the first generation Japanese migrants in Hawaii and the second generation Japanese migrants. And you can see how they very quickly assimilate in cancer incidence to their host country. So their stomach cancer risk goes down, but their breast cancer risk goes up, their prostate cancer risk goes up, and their colon cancer risk goes up dramatically as well. So what does this tell us? Well, first of all, it shows that their genetics did not change, but it shows that the environmental factors that they were exposed to, whether it's the workplace, whether it's their diet, etc., had a dramatic effect on their cancer risk. And the positive news is that we can reverse this if we can identify those factors and hopefully change the risk for everybody to as low as possible. I don't have much time, but I want to start out briefly with tobacco. All of you know that smoking loss causes lung cancer. Many may not know that there are 14 other kinds of cancer associated with tobacco consumption, including cancers of the colon, rectum, cervix, and leukemias. The good news is that we are overall making huge progress with tobacco prevention in the United States. And right now, our youth is not smoking at a very high rate. What's interesting, however, is that e-cigarette use is now surpassing cigarette use among middle and high school kids, and the consequences of that are to date unknown. Dr. Brawley just showed us the table of Dr. Kolditz's work on the contributors to cancer causes. So just to remind us, here's the big chunk that's smoking, here's overweight, obesity, diet and lack of exercise come right up here, contributing to energy balance overall. Now, this was in 2012, and with the smoking rates declining and obesity rates increasing, we actually are looking more at a picture like that, where overweight and obesity will in the near future probably surpass smoking as the #1 cause of cancer of cancer. So what does this actually mean? Cancer is not equal to cancer, not for treatment, not for prevention, and they all have different risk factors. I'm here just focusing first on the positive, which are the protective effects of physical activity. These data are derived from large expert reports culminating the evidence of more than 10,000 publications. And the World Cancer Research Fund has just recently published such an expert report. What you see is convincing reduction of risk of the colon, but probable here for breast and endometrium, and otherwise just limited or no differences. What does it look like for obesity? Convincing, 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 convincing all the way through. And these are not just all cancers, because the IARC, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, just recently published that 16 types of cancer are now associated with obesity. So what does this really mean on the biologic level? I have not the time to explain this complicated slide to you, but just to give you an idea that thanks to a lot of experimental data in both mice and humans, we know now that physical activity or caloric restriction can impact a number of pathways, including immune function, inflammation, oxidative stress, DNA repair, and even the gut microbiome. And all of these can play a role in future cancer risk. There's one factor I want to spend a little time on, which is adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is now emerging as a key player in cancer development, and we may have here also the potential to pharmacologically intercept the crosstalk between adipose tissue and tumors. So adipose tissue is not just there for fat storage, it's active in metabolism, synthesis, and secretion of substances such as IL-6, TNF-alpha, etc. And some of them can be cancer-promoting. And what makes this also interesting is that many tumors are directly surrounded by adipose tissue, for example, in the breast or also in the colon. This creates now a novel research area of crosstalk or microenvironment through the adipose tissue driving tumor growth. There are also, to make this more complicated, several different types of fat or adipose tissue, and the visceral or abdominal fat is emerging as a key player, especially because it can elevate the body's inflammatory state. Obesity is still on the rise. These are data from last year's report from the national academies, and you see the adult rates up here, and here the youth rates, with now still more than 12 million US youth being obese. Many have attributed this also to physical activity as one key player, and here are the data, the rates of youth physical activity around the world. These are moderate to vigorous physical activity minutes, and if you consider the entire comparison as A1, here's the United States with only about 45 minutes of activity per day among our youth. So is that all? Is it basically up to the individual to make choices about how their physical activity, how their body weight develops, or is there more to it? So let's think first about what does the individual do to influence this. We have many factors that play a role here, and it's just a quick snapshot. TV time, the income level that we spend on healthy foods, physical activity, unhealthy foods as well as healthy foods. Also medications, a lot of antidepressants cause weight gain. And the workplace, do we stand, do we sit? But there's even more to it. So the individual is surrounded by, first of all, the community. And this community means their family and friends. There's a living environment which may be safe or not safe for physical activity, which may include fast food restaurants or not, and playgrounds or not. Means of transportation, walkability of the neighborhood, healthcare and healthcare providers, school programs and workplace programs. And here comes in the policy level, where city planning plays a role, physical education in schools, sugar-sweetened beverage taxes, school food programs, government food programs, and insurance reimbursement. So there are many ways to intervene, and colleagues have also talked about the ways of causing active living and multiple dimensions of that. So just to give you an idea where we are with sugar-sweetened beverage tax implementation in the United States, blue are the states that have such a tax, red are the states that have rejected such a tax, and the white ones have not yet started this. And we can discuss this more as part of the panel later on. So just to summarize, up to 60% of cancers can be prevented. Obesity is likely to surpass smoking as the #1 cause of cancer. There are diverse biologic mechanisms that link obesity and energy balance to cancer risk. And obesity development can be impacted by a broad spectrum of factors at the individual levels, community level, and policy level. So this requires not only a transdisciplinary approach to research, which the National Cancer Institute has started through its TREC initiative, but also a multidimensional approach for intervention. So thank you very much for your attention.